I was 42 when I woke up one morning and didn't recognize my life. The mirror showed the same face, crow's feet creeping in, a few gray hairs, but behind my eyes was a stranger, restless and hollow, staring back at me. My kids were growing up too fast, my marriage felt like a checklist of chores, and my career, once a source of pride, had become a treadmill I couldn't step off. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, is this it? Did I miss the point somewhere along the way? That's where my story begins, and maybe, just maybe, it's where yours does too. It was a Tuesday, mid-afternoon, in the fall of 2022. I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something solid. I'd just hung up on a call with my boss, who praised my dedication, while piling on another project I didn't have the energy for. Instead of feeling proud, I felt trapped, like a hamster in a wheel, running but going nowhere. My phone buzzed with a text from my teenage daughter, Ellie. "Dad, you missed my soccer game again." My heart sank into my stomach. I promised her I'd be there, cheering in the stands, but deadlines had won, like they always did. That moment hit me like a freight train. I was living a life I hadn't chosen, and I didn't know how to stop. Have you ever felt like you're running out of time to become the person you were meant to be? That's the question that haunted me, the one that kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling while my wife, Sarah, slept beside me. It's the kind of question that sneaks up in the quiet moments, when the kids are asleep, the TV's off, and you're alone with your thoughts. For me, it came crashing down in that parking lot, and it felt like God was tapping me on the shoulder, whispering, "This isn't the end, it's the beginning. Let me take you back to that season of my life." I was a husband, a father of two, Ellie, 16, and Noah, 12, and a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio. On paper, I had it all: a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, a 401k growing steadily, and a minivan with enough cup holders to survive a family road trip. We went to church most Sundays, hosted barbecues for neighbors, and kept up with the Joneses, or at least tried to. But inside, I was unraveling. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m., replaying choices I'd made, the promotions I chased instead of coaching Noah's little league team, the arguments with Sarah that ended in cold silence instead of resolution, the Sunday sermons I nodded along to but didn't feel. Faith, once a fire in my youth, had become a routine, like brushing my teeth or paying the mortgage. That's what a midlife crisis feels like. Not the cliche of a red sports car or a reckless fling, but a deep, aching question: have I wasted my life? Society tells us it's just a phase. Pop culture laughs it off: buy a motorcycle, get a gym membership, or just push through until retirement. Therapists might call it an identity crisis, prescribing self-help books or mindfulness apps. But I believe it's more than that. I believe a midlife crisis is God's way of shaking us awake, calling us to something deeper, something eternal. It's not a breakdown, it's a divine invitation. Think about Abraham in the Bible. At 75, he was settled, comfortable, living in Haran with his family and wealth. Then God showed up and said, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Genesis 12 verse 1. Imagine that, 75 years old, with everything figured out, and God says, "Start over." Trust me, that wasn't a crisis, it was a calling. Abraham could have said no, clung to the familiar, but he packed up and went. His story reminds us that God doesn't care about your age, your resume, or how many years you think you've got left. He cares about your heart. My crisis wasn't as dramatic as leaving my homeland, but it was just as real. It started with small moments of discontent, snapping at Sarah over whose turn it was to do the dishes, scrolling job boards at 2 a.m., wondering if a new career would fill the void. Then came the bigger moments, crying in the shower so no one would hear, skipping church because I felt like a fraud in the pews, staring at old photos of Ellie and Noah when they were little, regretting the years I'd let slip by while chasing the next promotion. I was angry, at myself, at life, at God. Why hadn't He warned me I was drifting? Why hadn't He made my path clearer? But here's what I learned in that season: God doesn't cause the pain, but He uses it. Psalm 139 verses 23 to 24 became my lifeline. "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me, and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." I started praying that prayer, Not because I was holy, but because I was desperate. I didn't want to keep running from the ache inside me. I wanted to face it, to understand it, to let God do something with it. One night, after another argument with Sarah, this time about forgetting our anniversary, I sat on our back porch, staring at the stars through the Ohio haze. My coffee had gone cold, and my chest felt heavy, like I was carrying a decade of regrets. I felt like the prodigal son, lost in a life I'd built but didn't recognize anymore. I whispered, "God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm failing my family, my faith, myself. Help me." It wasn't a fancy prayer, just raw honesty, and that's when I felt it. Not a bolt of lightning or an angel choir, but a quiet nudge, like God was saying, "I've been waiting for you to ask." That moment was my turning point, but it wasn't instant. Change never is. I started small, reading a chapter of the Bible each morning, not to check a box, but to listen. I picked up a leather-bound journal and began writing my thoughts, my regrets, my hopes. Some days, it was just one sentence: "I'm scared I've let you down, God." Other days, it was pages of confessions, missed moments with my kids, harsh words to Sarah, dreams I'd buried under practicality. I apologized to Sarah, not with flowers or grand gestures, but with real conversations. I told her about the emptiness I felt, the fear that I wasn't enough. She listened, her eyes soft but tired, and said, "I've been waiting for you to let me in." I showed up for Ellie's next soccer game, cheering louder than anyone, even though she rolled her eyes and muttered, "Dad, you're embarrassing me." Noah started joining me for evening walks, where we talk about Fortnite or school or nothing at all, just being together. Slowly, I started to see my crisis not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough, a chance to realign my life with God's purpose. Let's pause for a moment. If you're reading this, maybe you're in your own midlife storm. Maybe it's not a parking lot meltdown, but a quiet ache that surfaces when you see your kids growing up too fast, or when you realize your marriage has more silences than conversations. Maybe it's the job you used to love but now dread, or the faith you've carried but no longer feel. That ache, it's not a sign you've failed. It's God whispering, "There's more for you. I'm not done with you yet." Look at Moses. At 80, he was herding sheep in Midian, a fugitive who'd left behind his Egyptian palace life and his dreams of leading Israel. Then God showed up in a burning bush and said, "I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." Exodus 3 verse 10. 80 years old, with a past full of mistakes, and God chose him for a world-changing mission. That's the kind of God we serve, one who sees our crises as opportunities, our failures as starting points. So, how do you answer God's call in your own midlife crisis? Let me share what worked for me, not as a formula, but as a map, a way to navigate the fog. First, stop running. Face the pain, the regret, the questions. Name them before God, like David did in Psalm 51. "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." I started by admitting I'd prioritized work over family, ambition over faith. It hurt to say it out loud, but there was freedom in the honesty. Second, listen. Spend time in prayer, in scripture, in silence. I began reading the Gospels, letting Jesus' words sink in. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11 verse 28. I'd sit in my backyard, coffee in hand, and ask God, "What are you trying to show me?" Sometimes I'd hear nothing. Other times, a verse or a memory would spark something, a reminder of who I wanted to be. Third act, take one step toward change. For me, it was showing up for my family, really showing up. I started leaving work on time, even if it meant saying no to extra projects. I volunteered to coach Noah's basketball team, despite knowing nothing about basketball. I signed up for a men's group at church, where I could be honest about my struggles with guys who got it. Each step felt small, but together, they built momentum. Fourth, trust. This was the hardest part. I wanted to believe God could redeem my mistakes, but shame kept whispering I was too far gone. Then I read Jeremiah 29 verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." I clung to that promise, choosing to trust that God wasn't holding my failures over my head. He was offering me a fresh start. The emotional high came one Sunday morning, about 6 months after that parking lot moment. I stood in church, singing Amazing Grace, with Sarah's hand in mine and Ellie and Noah beside us. I wasn't fixed, far from it. I still had days where doubt crept in, where old habits tempted me to retreat. But I was free from the lie that my mistakes define me, free to love my wife and kids better, free to chase God's purpose, not my own ambition. I looked at Sarah during that hymn, her eyes glistening, and I knew we were rebuilding something stronger. I looked at my kids, growing into people I was proud of, and I thank God I'd woken up in time. That season taught me that a midlife crisis isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding who you were always meant to be. It's God saying, I love you too much to let you settle for this. The regret, the fear, the longing, they aren't punishments. They're invitations. Invitations to heal, to grow, to step into a life that matters. I think of Ellie's shy smile when I showed up to her game, of Noah's laughter on our walks, of Sarah's quiet forgiveness. Those moments are my treasures, proof that God can redeem even the messiest chapters. But it's not just my story. I think of my friend Mark, who at 48 quit his corporate job to start a nonprofit for at-risk youth. He told me, I was miserable until I realized God was using my burnout to point me to my purpose. Or my neighbor Lisa, who at 45 went back to school to become a counselor, saying, I felt stuck, but God showed me I could still make a difference. These aren't isolated cases. A 2020 study found that 25% of Americans experience a midlife crisis, often marked by a search for meaning. That search, it's God's voice, calling you to something greater. If you're in that season right now, feeling the weight of what if or what now, don't ignore it. Your crisis is a sacred interruption, a chance to realign with God's plan. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to take one step. Maybe it's a prayer. God, show me what's next. Maybe it's a conversation with someone you've heard, or a dream you've buried that's worth dusting off. Maybe it's showing up for the people who matter most, even when it's messy. I still have hard days. I still wrestle with guilt over the years I can't get back. But I've learned to bring those feelings to God, to let Him carry what I can't. Romans 8 verse 28 has become my anchor. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Even the pain, even the regrets, God can weave them into something beautiful. If you felt this stirring, this longing for something deeper, I want you to know you're not alone. Your midlife crisis isn't the end of your story. It's the start of a new chapter. God's calling you, not to punish you, but to restore you. He sees you, not as a failure, but as a child He loves, a child He's calling home. So, here's my invitation to you. If you've ever felt that ache, that whisper that there's more to your life, share your story in the comments below. Your words might be the spark someone else needs to answer their own calling. And if you're still in the thick of it, hold on. Cherish this moment, because God's already working in it. He's not done with you yet. Take a deep breath, say a prayer, and step forward. Your comeback story is just beginning.